Oh, hi there. We're glad you're watching one of our virtual lunch presentations. We have a lot of good information that we've been accumulating over the past several years, and we invite you to look down just below here and hit the subscribe button, and the little bell will give you a reminder of when our next presentation is published here on the YouTube channel. Thanks for your support. Appreciate it. And this week, I am really pleased to have Matt Herdon back with us, along with Mike Woods, and well, Jeff Wilson is here as well, which is nice, from Nautel, to talk about the status of the Nautel transmitter line and the AUI, and answer any questions that you might have about anything Nautel. So it's going to be a great opportunity here, and let's turn our attention first to Matt, because he has to give us the bad news first.
Okay, so AUI, and so the AUI beta 2.1 is out, and we've got a number of people using it. It seems to be working well. The big difference between the 2.0 and the 2.1 was the fact that we now have a script that checks the bootloader version. So the challenge that we ran into early on in the beta 2.0 was that the bootloader version is crucial. If it's too old, then the installation will fail. And so what we did in 2.1 was to make it so that it would identify the bootloader and prevent the installation from even attempting by just stopping, and then your AUI would be left at the flash version, and that works. So we've seen that doing the right thing. So it stops at the right ones and it moves on and with the other ones. The other thing that we're also seeing is that the new phone home is operational, and we can see people are connecting and gathering data, and so that's kind of cool. So the next step for us is beta 3, and beta 3 is what I otherwise describe as a release candidate. So once we get to beta 3, we should be very close, like imminently close to releasing the VS version of the AUI. And the challenge that we're faced with is, and I'll be completely blunt about it, is that the installation issue with the bootloader, we want to fix it. We want to be able to upgrade that bootloader because it affects a meaningful number of customer machines. Otherwise, they're going to be left behind on the flash one, and we don't want that. So our goal is to sort of fix it so that we upgrade the bootloader during the installation process. So that's number one challenge. It's a big one. And then the other thing is that we're still hunting down things like memory leaks and things like that. We want to make it so that the host watchdog, which I'm sure a number of you are familiar with, that it doesn't need to kick in. Right now it does need to kick in, and we want to get rid of that. So those are the two main things. Otherwise, the software itself is actually incredibly complete, and the guys have done a really gorgeous job of cleaning it up and things like that. Anyone that was NAB, you got to see it in its current form, and we've done a lot with the different instruments and things like that. So it's in pretty awesome shape.
Well, that's good. That's really nice to when we showed the layout of the new format and such. There's so many nice new things that we can learn as we talk to our transmitter, and it talks back to us in essence.
Yep, absolutely.
Matt, let me ask a question here. Again, folks, if you have questions about the AUI, feel free to chat it, or to raise your hand, or hit your space bar. Some of the transmitters in the past have had remote connections for status or data from outside the transmitter. Will there be a way in the AUI for someone to do something with that? Or are you staying really away from it on purpose?
So the short answer is, for the release of the AUI on with HTML is no, because what we're trying to do is to do a duplicate of the Flash version of AUI. So we weren't looking for more problems to solve. We were looking to solve the things that we've already done. So we were creating a new version of the old product, and we've scoped a couple of things. We've actually left out a couple of things temporarily, just so that we can get it out the door as quickly as possible, which clearly has not happened, but that's a different story altogether. But the good news is, as we look forward, we will consider what enhancements people are looking for. I think Mike can probably speak to it, but you do need, for that kind of thing, the transmitter to actually have some capabilities to talk to those devices. So you might require an intermediate device and then be able to talk to that through some sort of I/O interface.
Well, probably the simplest thing and what I hear the most are folks that would like to know what the ambient temperature in the room is. And maybe they have a little sensor and it gives a little DC sample. And so that shouldn't really need much of an intermediary device. But if the transmitter could simply take that DC input and know that there was and
I think Mike is unmuted, so I think he's ready to comment.
I think what we're talking about is the kind of the GPIO, the general purpose input output connections to the transmitter. So not really dependent on Flash. This is dependent on the hardware that's already in that transmitter. So for NV and GV and even NV Lite, there is kind of three categories. There's digital inputs for control. There's digital outputs for status. There's four categories. There's analog outputs for telemetry, which are usually just forward power, reflective power, maybe PA volts, PA current. And the last one is we do have digital inputs. So those digital inputs usually just go to kind of a transistor, kind of a totem pole, a Darlington pair or something. And we can read the status of either an open or a ground connection. And then that can be read by the transmitter and displayed on the AUI. And we actually have something called simple site control in Flash. And our plan is to have it eventually available on the HTML5 version. But if people are familiar with that, and I've got it, I'm logged into a Nautel transmitter if you want me to share my screen. But the simple site control, what you can do is you can configure your digital inputs and you can just call them 1, 2, 3, 4, and then you can look at the status, high or low. Again, not analog, to your point, Barry. It couldn't read an analog voltage, but it could read an open or a short. So if you had a thermal switch, for instance, that was going to trip at 100 degrees or something like that, you could sense that. And then the other cool thing the transmitter can do, you can write some simple Boolean equations. And so if you had that thermal switch connected and it tripped, and maybe your output power was, low or something like that, then you could send a notification, or, you can come up with some creative equations to create some scenarios that give you early warning or some notification other than what the transmitter has out of the box. So.
Good. I've made it. You can grab the screen if you'd like here. And Tom Madeira asked the question as an example of what external thing might want to be handled: tower lights on and off.
Right. So if that was an open or a short, you could wire that to the terminal block on the transmitter at the appropriate pin and configure that input or that connection to be a configurable input. And then you can label it tower lights, and then you'd be able to read that status on the AUI on the remote, the web interface. But
not for the VS.
Sorry?
Back on Barry's question about temperature, do the transmitters have input and output temperature sensors?
Depends on which transmitter we're talking about, but a lot of them have some thermal sensor in the transmitter. They don't all have ambient inlet air. But they do have I believe every transmitter does have a thermal device that is metered. And so if you don't know the exact inlet air, you would at least know what your normal, let's say the heatsink temperature would be running at, and you could kind of extrapolate from that whether it was running in a normal ambient or not.
How many digital inputs do they have? I mean,
digital inputs, I'm going to look here.
I guess why I'm asking, how many contacts can you? I
believe it's on the, I'm logged into a GV and it's got 10. I don't remember exactly what the VS has. I believe it's quite a bit less, but.
Okay. And the MV series or the MV lights have those too?
And yeah, so NV Lite and VS use the same kind of exciter and control and remote infrastructure. So whatever I say for VS would be applicable to NV Lite as well. And then GV and NV are kind of in the same bucket from a remote control perspective.
One of the things that I'd like to open the door for, if you could.
No pun intended.
the existing AUI gives us things like impulse response, EQ response. These are things that a lot of folks don't have a clue what it really means. I was wondering if you take a quick trip through those. And I discovered at some point that the little arrows left, right, let you pick a part of that display and look a little bit at it. And what can we learn from our transmitters?
Okay, so am I able to share my screen?
Yes, sir.
Can I do that?
Little green thing at the bottom says share screen.
Yeah.
Select it and then click on share.
So I just have to pick the right window, I guess, to.
Yes, that would help. The picture of your family would be nice, but.
I don't see the Word document.
I can bring up an AUI if you need.
Well, it's not the AUI. I have a little Word document open, but I don't know why it's not allowing me to pick that. I can explain it in words. So our exciters are digital in nature, and most of them are created using either DSP and or FPGA technologies. In the last, let's call it the last stage where the FM creation is done, there's a filter that's been kind of prearranged in that power, in that chain of DSP logic that allows us to put in a filter of our choosing, and I don't remember how many poles it is, but and what we can do is we can typically compensate for, let's say, the high Q nature of a channel combiner that might have undesirable group delay or frequency response versus, amplitude versus frequency response issues. So we can put in a filter to compensate for unwanted transmission line linear distortions. And those widgets that you're referring to, which are 3 in total, there's EQ, frequency response, there's the impulse response and the EQ filter delay. Those are all measuring the metrics of that filter. So it is a configurable item. It's something that we sell as an option. So if it's not purchased, you're going to get the flat or the kind of the standard filter, which is just a bandpass with very, broad skirts. Allows it to pass the signal without any problem.
Like this one here?
Yeah, so any default system was just going to have the same plot for all of them. And so that's the frequency response. So you can see, and that's based around I believe it's the DSP sampling rate, kind of, because it's in the power chain at a lower sampling rate than the carrier. So it gets a little, it gets up converted as it goes down the path. But if you had a group delay issue or a channel combiner frequency response, and you wanted us to solve that for you, you could send us, you know, a data, a spreadsheet, comma separated values, or some kind of plot from a S21, S11 kind of perspective. And we could put in those numbers, come up with the appropriate coefficients, program that filter, and then you would see that filter's response on and how it was kind of affecting. So we'd be pre-correcting from a linear perspective the signal before it hit that unwanted issue downstream.
Is this a normal looking?
That is, yeah. So that's a transient response. So if you hit the filter with a step function, it's going to, you know, jump up in value and then have some kind of ring to it based on its Q and some of the other factors to it. So that's what you're seeing there, is that frequency or that impulse response. And these were just, you know, call them nice to haves, that we thought it was easy to do. We had the computing power to do it. And again, if you purchase that filter, it's nice to see that it's doing its thing when employed in that signal chain.
Okay.
That's interesting. Is that to compensate for a non-flat antenna?
Yeah, so we can adjust group delay independent of amplitude. We can adjust amplitude independent of phase response. So we can compensate. Most of the applications I've seen has been group delay issues on multi-cavity channel combiners. So you'll start to get some unwanted, you know, it won't be a linear phase response, which would otherwise cause perhaps, you know, stereo separation issues or some kind of unwanted degradation of the modulation signal. And so we can put that filter in, and the wonderful thing is 2 wrongs can make a right. If you have a group delay of X and you put in the complement to it, the 2 of them will cancel out and act as a linear system. So, and if you go back, geez, it might be 15 years ago, I gave a presentation at the NAB, more on regards to how it would affect an iBox signal, but it's the same kind of improvements that can be realized if you use that type of filter.
Mike and Matt and Jeff, this is a live transmitter. It's on the air right now here in Tucson.
Okay.
Any comments you'd like to make about it, or have me show some other screen, or should I just drop this and we can continue on with our discussion?
So let's see. So 63 watts. So obviously very. What's the model number that we're looking at?
This is a VS300.
VS300. Okay. So it's just idling along at, you know, very small power level, only a watt reflected. That's all good. Your RF spectrum. Obviously no spurs or no issues there. And the spectrum we developed, you know, mostly around the HD operation and the third order intermod products that can really, you know, rise up if you don't have a well linearized system. But in the analog world, you know, I don't think I've ever seen issues with the allowable mask that you've got there. So everything looks normal there to me.
What does the, again, just for those of us that weren't paying full attention,
yep.
What is this peak here about the impulse response deviating from the image, imagine, or whatever the blue line is?
Yeah, so when you look at filter metrics, there are different kind of you know, axes you can look at. Frequency response versus or amplitude versus frequency would be the frequency response curve. This, when you hit a filter with a step function, it's going to rise to some amplitude, and then it's going to decay over time. And so the green plot is showing that rise in amplitude, and then that little bit of, you know, it's a exponentially decaying ringing that occurs. And then the imaginary shows the phase response. So it's essentially saying it's a very linear, well-designed filter to pass your signal without any, ill effects. And if you bring up the other ones, you'll see kind of a bandpass response, the frequency response curve there. It just show, that's a bandpass response. It's got lots of width to carry the entire FM channel that you're broadcasting on. And then the last one is, I believe, the delay, which is similar to kind of a phase response, but it's looking at the time through the filter. So it's flat, which is what you want to see through where your modulation, where your sidebands are passing. So they're all going through with the exact same delay time and not causing any phase distortions, which would otherwise cause you to have that's the center point of the filter.
Yeah.
So it's
Okay, very good.
does that answer your question on those?
Yes, it does.
Yeah.
There is no signal constellation. because
Yeah,
it's
signal
not-
constellation is a demodulated HD OFDM signal. So the modulation that occurs in a digital system, the sidebands are quadrature phase shift keyed.
Mhm.
So they have 4 possible states that once the symbol's been impressed on the carriers, they can run at 4 possible phases. So the QPSK, and so when they get looked at from a signal quality perspective, you want to see, is that really, at 45 degrees or 135, or is it 47 degrees? So if it deviates too far from what that phase should be, then you can have bit errors that will corrupt the signal. So we show that constellation going through the transmitter. Now, it might hit other distortions out in the real world with, ambient noise and other interference signals. But we can show you that it will be leaving the transmitter with a very good constellation accuracy.
Okay. The only thing that I see, of course, and I've commented on this in the past, and it's not a Nautel issue. The battery here is right down toward the edge of the green yellow and needs to be replaced. Do you have a little video showing people how to replace the battery?
I'm quite sure that the handbook does have a battery replacement guide to it. Having said that, we have a relatively new tool at our disposal, which is called Composer. And it's a kind of a cousin of our 3D CAD system. And so we've been pretty busy starting to create videos, which don't require, really any heavy reading or English, really. It's all done with pictures. So we've been starting to create a library of maintenance videos. I'll go out on a limb and say we've got the battery replacement activity probably booked to have a video around it. So that would be a nice, and we'll be putting those on, on the USB that comes with the transmitter, downloadable on the site, load them on YouTube. So there'll be lots of, streams to be able to get them. And then last but not least, if anyone watched our introduction to the VX line, we've actually designed out the battery on the latest transmitter exciter card. So I think
Okay, let me drop the screen here and let's talk about the VX a little bit, shall we? Mike, go ahead.
I can, if you want, I can go through the slides as
Go
a
ahead,
more
please do.
formal sort of thing, and then Mike can add color commentary as we go along.
Please do.
I'll share my screen, and we can do it that way. Yeah, okay. So I'll share my screen and see if I'm. So I want screen number 2, yes, which you should now be able to see. And when I click present, it should continue to be that way.
No, that's you. There we go.
Sorry, I'm just seeing a question here. Oh, okay. I lost.
Can you see that now?
Yes.
Okay, great. So I'm going to kind of blast through this fairly quickly and touch on high points because I don't want to chew up all the time with a million slides. There aren't that many, but Mike can sort of stop me when we hit something that's particularly interesting, or I'll throw it over to Mike. So it's a brand new series. It ranges from 150 watts all the way up to 5 kilowatts. And they're going to be released in 2 phases, which we'll talk about in a second. It is a FM analog focused series. So we're going to go through that. It's a ground up design. So everything is brand new. The layout inside the box is very accessible. The idea is that you can take off the top and you can get to pretty much everything. And the only tool you need, and we'll probably comment on this in a little bit, is a Phillips screwdriver pretty much, and you can get all the way through there. Super clean layout. The guys in engineering have done a fantastic job of that. There are things from a serviceability, which we wanted to address, so it's solderless PA replacement, cleaning your filters. You just undo 4 Phillips screws, pop out the filter, wash it, throw it back in again. If you want to change or pull out the power supply, literally you hit a button and it pops out the front. It's also very shallow, so it's a lot shallower than the VS series, so it's about 20 inches plus your cabling and stuff in the back. If you compare it to kind of the VSs and the VS 2.5, if you were to compare it to the VX2, you know, we're less than half the weight of that. The volume is also quite a lot less. So you can see these visual comparisons at the bottom side by side. So it's very compact, and the power density of the VX2 particularly is fantastic. It's a 2RU unit that's doing 2 kilowatts without cutting all sorts of maintenance corners. It would have been very easy to jam a whole bunch of stuff in there and make it unmaintainable, but we've managed to make it so it's super clean. We gain a lot of our efficiencies from this new power supply, which is top of the line power supply. A lot of the cost that goes into these units is actually in that power supply, and it's a titanium grade power supply. We've got a question there, yeah, Jeff Wilson pointed out that it's super light and there's no more slide rails on the side. So it's actually, when you put it into a rack, you can support it on these the front ears here with bolts, and you don't need to have a tray or rails. Let's see, it supports the Orban option, so you can have Orban inside if you want, and it just sits where this arrow is pointing here. It's got quite a bit of headroom processor-wise. It's got a dual-core signal processor. It's also got a separate analog audio card, so that if that fails, you're just replacing that as opposed to the thing that it would have been attached to in a different design. Again, Mike, feel free to jump in if I'm glossing too badly. This one I like a lot, which is the Solderless dedicated interlock. So the interlock on the VS, for instance, you got to mess around with that little block, and so this solves that. It's a very nice little interlock solution that we've added. So when we were preparing to do this particular model or range of models, we looked at all of our customer service complaints about the previous transmitters that we've had, and we've tried to address the big things that sort of popped up. And so when people said, you know, I don't like having to have rails, I don't like your interlock, there's those types of things, we incorporated that feedback into the design. The user interface on the front panel UI, or the FPUI as we like to call it now, it's a nice 4:3 ratio full color screen, and uses the same icons and language as the AUI, the new AUI. So there's a lot of commonality between the two. And you can also see that there are physical buttons for turning the RF on and off and setting it into local mode only. These are dual state LED buttons. So if you press on that, it's going to change to red, and the text will actually say off. So they're kind of cool. And there's a USB on the front as well. So you just take that little cover off and you can plug a USB in for doing software updates or music or those types of things. It's not for charging your phone though. And we now use a rotary encoder with the back button as a way of navigating. So the screen that you're looking at is really the dashboard, and that as soon as you touch either the rotary screen, the knob, or the back button, it will go to the top level menu, and then from there you'll be able to sort of navigate. It does come with the new AUI, of course, and that has all the things that I've talked about a lot of times before. If you compare it to what we have today, and we're going to keep the VS series going because that's going to service our HD customers that want HD, let's compare it sort of model to model, and USB connected to dead air feature. What does that mean? Can you expand on that? There's a question from Tim, which is USB port connected to dead air feature.
Probably if you lose your audio, will it transfer automatically to the USB port?
Oh, that would be the case if you know, with the audio player. And so we got some challenges there, but we expect to fix those. So that is how it works on the VS today. So if you need a fallback, you can switch to MP3 files that are on a USB. Yeah, okay, good. So if we compare it to the VS series, you can see that we're improving the affordability of models that are similar. So if you're looking at the VS300, it's roughly the same size, a little shallower, a little lighter. I can tuck one of these under my arm and walk about with it without too much trouble, and did so at NAB quite a bit. And then when you compare it to the VS 2.5 to the 2, which is not quite an accurate comparison. But then we've also added a number of new models, so 150, 600, and 1.5, which allows you to sort of pick the right power level. So if you're wanting something in the sort of 500 watt range, then you'd pick a VX 600, for instance. So so you get more choice as well as affordability. We've done a ton of things in terms of the design itself, and if there's questions, then I think I'm going to throw all of these to Mike. But we did a huge amount of thermal modeling to make sure that what we have works. We're looking at the flows through the system, and also making sure that we don't push the boundaries. So we're trying to be very conservative so that we have a long lifespan for the unit. Also looking at the electromagnetic analysis and so on. Everything's built here, so you know it's a North American design. And yes, so there's that. From a performance point of view, there's all sorts of things here. I'll just leave that slide up here. Mike, is there anything that you think is worth sort of highlighting here? Because I'm not familiar enough to.
The RF amplifier technology is cutting edge. It's using the latest LDMOS FET with so there's the FET that a lot of transmitter manufacturers use today for FM broadcast, which has got similar specs regardless of which manufacturer you go to, and most of the big players are using the same device. This is the next one, kind of more evolved, but better performance, higher drain breakdown voltage, less susceptible to a phenomena called snapback, if you're familiar with how FETs kind of avalanche and fail. Very robust. I won't say we can't, but we have a hard time blowing up in the lab. It's been the most robust amplifier that I've ever been developed with. So very cool technology, and it allows us to get 1100 watts into a 1.2 VSWR across the entire FM band in that VX1 design. So the other models less than VX1 are all using that same amplifier. So they're really, conservatively rated down to 150 watts.
Awesome. Keep rocking. So if there's questions, fire them up. The types of roles that this is ideal for: main transmitter, backup, LPFM. The 150 and the 300 are LPFM certified. It's good for an exciter replacement, translator, and single frequency networks, and pretty much a portable emergency transmitter as well. We're one of our salespeople. Well, actually, Jeff is about to get our Pelican case that we have for one of these, and so that he can take it on the road and it can go on the plane as check luggage. So we'll be sending that to him so that he can do that. And then if we go into the mid-range power for VX series, this is the 3 to 5 kilowatt range. And as you can see, it's two pieces, very similar top piece of 2 RUs without the power supply in the front there, and then a power amplifier below. And we can dive right into that. And the models are 3, 3.5, 4, and 5. They're all the same physical size, with 3 power supplies along the bottom, and then the power amplifiers, etc., washable filters, all of that kind of thing.
I think I asked you the question before, Matt. Fan noise.
Oh, way less, and a different frequency as well. So, if I were to turn on my my VS, it's like a small 747 taking off behind me, but this one uses variable speed fans, and the pitch is different, so it's a lot less noisy.
So yeah, we had that feedback, those comments. So we looked at what was possible. We looked at some tenders that we've either bid on or been not able to bid on because of these large transmitter halls and kind of other places in the world. So the spec that we're meeting now, not only is it a different frequency, more kind of comfortable for human ears, but it's 65 dBA at 3 meters compared to, I want to say 72 or 73. So it's a significant drop in sound pressure level on the VX versus the VS. So,
and while we're talking about fans, I think it's also worth noting that the reason we put the fans at the front, which obviously creates the noise in the first place, is because we're pulling cold air over the fan bearings and the fan housing and everything, and so we're pushing cold filtered air over the electronics, including the fans themselves, which gives us much better longevity for the fans and better clean air for the components inside the box. So we believe strongly that this is kind of a very good design to run with, as it means you get less fan failures.
Are these maglev bearings in the fans?
I don't know. Do you know, Mike, offhand?
The type of bearing, I don't know off the top of my head. But they're
okay. Just curious.
Yeah.
Because we use some maglev stuff in some products and they kind of last forever. They're not.
Yeah. These are the mean time between failure. The MTBF calculation numbers are over 80,000 hours, and that's at 50 C, which 120 degrees Fahrenheit. So, and I think it doubles for every 10 degrees. So if you're running it kind of at a normal 75, 80 degrees, you're going to be, and 8,700 hours per year, you can do the math. It's 15
amazing.
plus 20 plus years on the fan by calculation. Now, granted, there's other failure modes, but from a wear-out mechanism, that's pretty good.
I'm sure somebody's going to ask about the filters, washable filters. Many sites don't have water on site. So do you provide 2 sets of filters?
That's a good question. So right now, I've kind of created the ancillary kits. I didn't put that in there, but I mean, that's something we could certainly consider. They are, you know, a procurable small item. So definitely something to put on our list. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good one. While we're on this page, it's also worth noting the weights here.
I will.
Oh, sorry.
I will note one thing, which is these are the filters. They do have a long-term wear out mechanism to them because of their kind of plastic nature. So if they're in a heavy UV light, we've known after whatever, 10 plus years, they may dry out. So depending on your maintenance schedule, if you had one in the box for a long time, it may not be as flexible and pristine as the day you got it. But
So I guess if someone got a spare, they could just cycle them out on a yearly basis, take it back somewhere where there's water, give it a wash, and then take it back to the site or whatever, and just keep cycling them. Yeah.
Good point.
Yeah. On the weight, while we're on this page, you can see the exciter controller on the top is 15 pounds, but more importantly, the power section itself without the power supplies is about 50 pounds. So a lone person could get that into a rack. You're probably not going to want to put it above your head, but you can be able to sort of move that and so that makes it, that's one of the reasons that we separated these two boxes, was to make it more manageable and also make it more maintainable. We still want to be able to open the box and service the components that are inside, as opposed to having layer upon layer of stuff which you have to sort of dig through. So there's that. There's the back of it. While we're here, I can sort of point out another thing. We've talked about the interlock here, but over here, this little blue thing here is the SD card, and that's the memory storage. So if you wanted to make a backup of your transmitter setup, and you can just pop that card out. It's slightly recessed, so you don't do that by mistake, bump into it and turn your transmitter off. You can pop it out and make a direct copy of it. You can clone it and then put that, you could tape it to the side of the box or whatever, and have that as your backup. But we've gone with that because we feel that the read-write capabilities of SD cards is pretty excellent these days, and so you've got all sorts of flexibility with that, and they're quite cheap.
Is that just configuration, or is the operating system and application on there too?
I think it's the whole thing, isn't it, Mike?
Yeah. The OS is on there.
It's the whole thing. Yeah, it's everything. So making a copy of it, you could pop that out and make a copy, and then put the copy in it and just boot right back up again.
Yeah, that's great if you need to swap out a transmitter.
Yeah.
I think that's part of the problem. I mean, that you presented with that problem. They really don't want
Assuming these are single phase.
find the guy. He can give us an address. We can probably process.
Depends on the model. So the 3 to 5 are available in single or 3-phase, and the VX2 and lower are all single phase.
Okay, let's get ABS.
Okay. So basically, you're looking at a full range that is 10 models, and so going all the way from 150 up to 5 kilowatts, and gives you a huge amount of flexibility in terms of picking the right one, as we've mentioned before. In summary, you can see all here, all the bits and pieces. But more importantly, on the right here, we've got the availability. So we expect to have these ones shipping in the last quarter of this year. And that's up to 2 kilowatts. And we've got a number of these in early mode, alpha mode, I'll call it, alpha test versions, that are doing the rounds at shows and things like that. And you can see the front panel UI, it all works and things like that. The thing that's actually not in there at the moment is mostly the AUI, but that's going to be relatively straightforward. And then in the new year, in the first quarter of next year, we'll see the VX 3 to 5 kilowatt range become available. And I think that is, Oh yeah, this is a good slide. So a lot of times people are kind of like, where does it fit in the family of things? So the green here is the GV series, and then we've got the MV lights, and we've got the VS and the VX. And the VX reaches all the way down to the 150 and goes up to the 5. The VS has got the digital focus now, and then the GV spans digital down to analog. The MV light is more popular for the analog as well, but also can do digital. And their ranges go up into the sort of the 40 kilowatt and 80 kilowatt respectively. So that's where it fits in terms of the Nautel family. There's a question. Oh, right. Yes, there was questions about ball bearings and then the magnetic levitation. I remember I used to work in a machine shop where we did a lot of grinding, and we had filmatic bearings, which were kind of like mag, but they were used a fluid, and as they spun up, they would just sit on this fluid, and it worked incredibly well. And that is the presentation. So I'll leave it on this one because it's got some information. So are there any other questions? Thank you, Jeff. Jeff has posted information, a link to the VX page on our website. If you see any typos, please let me know. I'm the one that wrote it.
And also you're welcome. You're welcoming questions on any of the models.
Absolutely. Yeah. So now we can, I've said my little bit, so you should have a pretty good orientation on the VX series. Mike, anything to add, or are there any questions?
I think you've covered most of the bases there.
Have you identified any particular failure items that folks should be aware of?
On the VX?
Any series. We'll just throw it open here to maintenance and support. And
I think the biggest area probably that's worth mentioning is that on the VSs, a number of people have network issues, and at the moment what we're seeing in the new AUI, because the networking is managed by the AUI, what we've seen so far is that the networking seems to be working a lot better in the new AUI. So I'm optimistic, let's put it that way, that the new AUI solves a number of the things that we've struggled with in the past on the Flash AUI. That doesn't mean it won't have its own special little issues as well, because of course that would be foolish to make that assumption. But I think we've got a very robust architecture, and so I'm optimistic that it's a lot more maintainable because we've done the person that designed it, I think, did a really nice job of the architecture. And it does include a whole new operating system. So as we roll out onto each platform, there's a new operating system. So it's actually a pretty amazing refresh on your transmitter. So and it's free.
This is Larry at KQEI and KQED. And I have a question regarding the new AUI. We have combined 2 NV transmitters being controlled by SC1. So is the AUI upgrade compatible with combined transmitters controlled by an SC1?
How does that work, Mike?
Yeah, so the SC1 is obviously, it's a system controller we designed for main standby, N+1 combined systems. It talks to the transmitter with kind of general purpose IO and or serial comms. So it's not really in the path of the AUI. It has an Ethernet capability. You can look into its operations. You need a little box called an NX link, which is a third party serial to Ethernet adapter.
Yeah, we have that connection.
Yeah, okay. So that does not run the AUI. That's just kind of a pretty low level program to get basic metering function and to give you control. So the answer, the simple answer is yes, you can upgrade your transmitters and it won't affect that interoperability at all.
Good, great. That's what I was looking for.
Yeah.
Well,
Ooh,
floor
got
is
a comment on capitalization on my website. So yeah, I tried to follow the proper SI unit recommendations around capitalization. So I'm going to immediately go and check that. May have missed something.
okay. Anyone else in our group this afternoon have a question, comment, something that you love about Nautel, something you don't like about Nautel? We're running out of US manufacturers.
I do have a comment. We recently ordered a handful of Nautel transmitters for some upcoming upgrades and new builds. My question is, I learned this here a while back that if you have an ERI antenna, I'm specifically talking about an NV Light Series transmitter, that I'm told that I have to have a shorting stub mounted on the output of the transmitter. And this apparently only happens if you have an ERI antenna. Other antennas don't seem to be bothered by the lightning problem. I've talked to a number of people that have indicated their RF, they'd lost RF pallets because of not having that stub. You think you folks could maybe make it known to the new customers that this is going to be something required?
So yeah, so this phenomena that you're talking about is, and it's not, it's mostly ERI, but if the antenna that you have has got its own stub installed,
Correct.
what that does is and your tower is getting hit with lightning of significant values. What it does is it's providing a DC path from the elevated ground potential around the antenna down to the center conductor of the transmitter. Now the transmitter has built into it shunting coils specifically for that protection, and they work very well, but they have limits. And my analogy is, you can take a waterproof watch and at 1,000 feet, it's going to start leaking. So if you hit enough joules into that transmitter, it becomes a pretty tough task for it to shunt all that energy away, and the result is a PA will fail. We've got series capacitors blocking the DC. We've got the shunt caps in there. We do the best we can, within all the constraints, RF impedance, and obviously dollars per watt, and all these other. We do the best we can to mitigate that. We have found statistically, we've shipped literally thousands of these transmitters, whether they're NV Light or GV or NV. They all have this corporate combining structure that has a DC path usually to half of one module. Of the thousands that are out there, I've seen, I'm going to say about 20 sites that get hit with enough energy that it becomes an issue. And we have provided, just like you put a transient suppressor on your AC mains, if you have lots of transient energy on your mains, we have put transient suppressor, which is in the form of a quarter wave shorted stub on the output of the transmitter, to give further kind of shunting capabilities to the transmitter in those rare occasions. So I don't think it's needed at every site. It's needed in less than 1%. So it's not something that we're kind of, saying to everybody, oh, you got to buy this stub at the same time. It's in the rare occasion, if you've got a site that's getting hit a lot, you've got this antenna stub on the top of the tower. It's kind of the two unfortunate components that will lead to potential high transients coming into the transmitter.
Okay, well, and that's fine. And I went ahead and bought stubs for the 3 big transmitters that I got, but I didn't know anything about it. I mean, there's nothing on the website or any literature that I saw, and the vendors that I deal through didn't think about it or didn't know about it. So maybe if you guys made people a little more aware that, yes, this could be something you may have to add, to buy on top of the
Yeah,
transmitter.
I think I definitely agree. We can be better at least bringing up and talking about the circumstances and the statistics and what
Right.
the situation is, so that you can make an informed decision on whether you think you need it or not.
Right.
My experience, I work closely with John Wilton, who's the head of our customer service department, and all the techs, not only my friends, but colleagues for many years. Most of the time we're pretty we try to help the customers out as much as we can. If you see a fault that's occurring on the transmitter, PA pallet fail, we'll usually diagnose and repair under warranty, or give some feedback as to what precautions can be made. But yeah, it should be on the front end of the sales process as well. So
well, and I've got ARI antennas at all three of these sites, so I went ahead and just bought the stubs also. I mean,
so I'd be curious, do you know if your ERI antennas actually have the stubs on those installed? Because my understanding is that's almost like an option on the ERI design.
All three of mine do.
Do they? Okay. And then part two is, what part of the US are you in? Are you,
Central.
So the lightning
We get it.
activity is kind of moderate. It's not like Florida or something.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So
Right.
yeah, I think, it's definitely where we've shipped out stubs to people. I did kind of an analytical review of their before failure rates and after, and it certainly helped everyone we installed them on. But a lot of them were in, Louisiana and Florida,
Mhm.
some of these southern places that get a lot, hits almost every week, or certainly during the summertime.
Right. Right. And I guess I'm trying to throw in prevention ahead of putting the thing together, because these sites are pretty scattered. So
Yes. Yeah.
any bit of prevention I can do, the better. But I just thought I'd bring it to your attention that I think it should be.
I'm very aware of it. I think I got copied, and forgive me.
Okay.
I'm not sure if it was from you specifically, but I am aware of a recent customer's concerns, and we're talking about it at the sales and senior management team level to make sure that we better manage, that issue, or that knowledge to our sales team, and to when they have these conversations with the.
Great. That's awesome. Thank you.
I'm calling up just with response to a previous, I believe it's ceramic bearings.
Great.
In the fan. I'm looking at the spec sheet, and that's what I see there.
Yeah. So Barry was asking about the power, and so on the homepage for the VX series on our website, in the matrix down at the bottom, you can see the analog power listed here. So it's similar to the VS. So if you've got a VS 300, then the max power is 330, and so on. It's a 10% extra. The full specification sheet that I think Mike was just referring to is right here. So you can click on that and you'll go to a PDF.
That came from one of our YouTube viewers.
Oh, okay, cool. So that's where you can glean that. At the moment, this is fairly lightweight. I did this. I took this live the evening after the launch that we did, which was actually Jeff Welton and I did that out of his hotel room in Las Vegas. We did the launch for the VX series, and so that evening I came back to my hotel room and launched the website. So so we'll be fleshing it out over time, as we get closer to actually releasing the product, then we'll actually do another launch event closer to that time. We'll do a release event.
They all do seem to be about 10% high.
Yes, they are. That is exactly the math. So yeah.
All right. Any other questions, folks, on any of the Nautel models?
I'll leave it here.
We've come to a point in history where your products are well known, and
Yeah.
people know that they buy them, they plug them in, they work.
I'm gonna keep it doing that. Yeah.
And the support is excellent.
Awesome. Yeah, we're very lucky because we retain the people that we've and so people have got a lot of history. So and their expertise just gets greater and greater. Yeah, so yeah, we're very lucky with an awesome support team. Thank you. Anything else?
Well, on that note, I will offer my sincere thanks to you, Matt, you, Mike, and Jeff for being with us today and answering a lot of questions and making known the features of the VX series. Really,
hopefully I won't be back to apologize again about the AUI. I'll be able to come back and be a little more
oh, I'm ready for that one.
Yeah. Since Jeff Welton's not here to rub my nose in it, I'll do it myself. No, we're working incredibly hard. The team is really working on it, and as I say, it's those two main issues that are holding us back, and the feature set is really awesome. So yeah.
Matt, there's another question came in also from this gentleman in Florida on the YouTube. There are two LPFMs in Live Oak, Florida that are waiting till August for two VS300s. Could they switch to the VX?
Talk to your sales rep. That's the right thing to do. They can give you a sense of how soon you'd get them, what the process would be, you know, because they're the ones who are the experts in sort of getting the supply to you. So yeah, I guess Florida, that would be
that's Ted, and his answer will be yes. We'll work with you to swap it out.
And we've already got LPFM certification on the VX 300 and 150, so that's already in place. So no blocker there.
I guess the caveat is as long as you're willing to wait for the delivery.
Yeah, it's just the time. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's meant, you can see it up here. It's mentioned the roles. LPFM is noted here. So, and it's the 150 and the 300.
Very good, gentlemen. Again, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
Hope to see you again one of these days soon.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. Thanks, everyone.
All right.